Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rulani Charles Saka. I'm here to present my research, which is developing an assembly planning framework. Okay, so in my presentation, I'm going to cover the following: the introduction, the background of the study, the research problem, the aim and objective, the question, the hypothesis, as well as my framework. Okay, first, all right. In the past, we realized that, okay, we're a growing industry. Manufacturing, yes, it's been growing, but it hasn't been growing at a very rapid rate, unlike other industries. So, where does this leave us? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we realize that as South Africa, we're a growing and developing country. We face a lot of problems. One of our biggest problems is that we get new products and services. But our key problem starts here. How do we implement them? Companies such as Gibela, I'm just taking it as in the context of where we are now. You're going to be producing new trains. New trains will need new people, new staff, and new equipment. But how is the planning of those things? In my research, I'm planning to cover up saying, okay, we have this. Where do we go from here? My assembly planning framework will cover up topics such as equipment, people, as well as the layout of the facility, because this is where most of the money that you invest come into. Okay, let me move on with my slides. Right. So my study will be based on the reconfigurable assembly fixture, which is RAF. But RAF is just a case study for me as well. That we're saying that we want an assembly planning framework, but we're only going to be using this new product, we call it RAF. RAF was developed recently by Dr. Banji. So with this in mind, we said, okay, it's better to look into something that is new into the market so that we can understand the dynamics that goes in between of doing such a study. Okay, so like I said, look at three things: people, equipment, and layout. When it comes to people, we realize that we have the following problems with, let me not say problems, but we have challenges and opportunities based on people. You got your poor skills, no education, demotivation, as well as age of the worker. So currently in South Africa, we have a lot of aged, let me say seasoned workers that are going through the end of their life cycle inside the factories. So what happens? We're having to lose skills. And then when you realize that, like what my colleagues have been presenting throughout, saying that we need to have learning factories, for example. These learning factories can address this kind of things, but we also need to look at what else we can look into as well. Okay? The next one, we're looking at the layout mismatch. Why do I say it's a layout mismatch, you ask? Remember, you're producing a new product. It doesn't necessarily mean that if somebody have given you this kind of layout, it's always going to be optimum for your industry. That's why you find out that you're having many companies today that does a lot of construction work during the off-season, which is during the production closure any time of the year. It differs from company to company. So this is what I'm also going to be covering in my research. The last one will be equipment. Everyone knows that, okay, you have this equipment, you're producing this new product. How are you going to look into it? How are you going to justify that when I'm having this kind of equipment, I'm going to use it effectively or efficiently? So this is where we have to go into as well. So all in all, my research is looking on those three aspects, but in the planning capacity of the production system. But remember, like I said, looking into production, I'm just narrowing it down a little. You can use this very same thing for service industry as well. Okay, like I said, South Africa is growing. We have higher market demands. What happens? Manpower, equipment, part of your highest initial investment every time. So these are one of the key things. I think I've already covered it at the beginning here. Okay, so what am I going to do? My aim here is to look into the production assembly fixture, but also looking into, okay, fine. We want to not only attack the big companies such as US Gibela, but like we said at the beginning, we're also looking into other smaller industries, not thinking about what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but in the next 10 years, when Gibela is also not there. You'll have small SMMEs coming into being. They're going to be suppliers for Gibela one day. They're going to be supplier for Prasa as well. So we also have to think about that kind of aspect at the end of the day. Right. So how am I going to do this? I'm just going to explore other industries, see what else they're doing. I'm not only going to be saying this is what is correct or what is wrong, but looking into other industries, it will also broaden the horizon to say, people, we have this kind of a problem in South Africa. We need to address it. Whatever new stuff that we need to come up with, it has to be concrete so that our newer generation of engineers or operation managers or whatever title that they have, they can be able to work with it at the end of the day. Okay, so these are my favorite questions. I'm not gonna have a lot on the first research question because I think everyone, when I was talking, I was giving you guys some kind of an aspect going into it. The second one to say, okay, when I said, for example, these factors are my 3 factors, which are people, equipment, and layouts. How are they affected when we do certain things in the organization? How will they affect our lead time? Because remember, if you have a company that can produce something faster, something cheaper, you'll always go for it, am I right? So this is what we also want to attack, saying as bigger companies and smaller SMMEs, how are they going to attack the new world? We're looking into that, saying we're no longer looking for people that are going to say, where am I going to find a job, but how am I going to create a job with this kind of a problem that exists in our South African industry. Okay, so this is my hypothesis, saying that this framework will result in reduction of cost, increase in quality, and decrease in lead time across establishment of industries, including SMMEs. This is very important for us when I say SMMEs, because like I said, I'm emphasizing it a lot because I like the fact that Mr. Mdao have always, when we were at Gibela the other time, he said, you know what, you must also think about who's gonna supply our smaller components as well. We don't always need to go abroad to buy our smaller, excuse me, we don't always need to go abroad to buy our smaller components, but use it here in-house as well. Okay, so this is my framework that I'm gonna be looking at the most. Right, the cost of my, remember I said at the beginning, I'm only using RAF as a framework. Yes, I'm gonna be working with RAF, but it's gonna be as a, not as a framework, but as a case study to say, okay, this is what's happening. So these are some of the dynamics that you might end up having while you're moving along in the future. We're looking at the overall quality, the lead time, and the cost of assembly. Right, I'm sorry for the unclear, some of the things are unclear. Right, you look at the assessment of cost with respect to the layout design, how your man is going to be affected, the equipment, how is it going to relate in terms of skills with other people, as well as harmonizing of layout, men, and equipment in a manufacturing environment. I think that is very key because, like what my colleagues have been saying all along, because I don't want to give you things that are irrelevant, but things that you can actually relate to, saying that, okay, you have this equipment, you have this layout, you have this manpower, can you be able to produce what you say you want to produce at the end of the day? Because obviously if they're not harmonized enough, you might end up finding that, oh, my costs are high. Or let me see, my equipment are not enough, or I've purchased the wrong equipment. At the end of the day, it doesn't go hand in hand with what I'm producing. At the end of the day, this is what we're always looking at. Okay, my methodology is quite simple. I'm going to be looking into some research that have been done, literature reviews. I'm still looking a whole lot more into which route to go to interview questionnaires, but I'm more into the questionnaire kind due to the fact that it's easier to do some things using things such as monkey survey, which is faster, it costs less as well for you to acquire the data instead of going and acquiring interviews and all those things, and it end up taking a little bit longer due to availability of people. And the last one, just looking into standard operating conditions and say procedures, and saying, people, these are the procedures, so how do we look into some kind of things that we can say, okay, when you use a certain equipment, this is how it's supposed to be used. How is it going to be incorporated into our place of work at the end of the day? Yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation. It's sweet and short.